Today, we dive into one of the most intimate and lyrical chamber music works of Franz Schubert, his string quartet in A minor, commonly known as the Rosamunde Quartet. Why is it so special? What is the story behind it? And what makes this music so deeply affecting? Let's explore. Schubert composed the Rosamunde Quartet in February to March of 1824. Composed when he was only 27 years old, this piece marks his return to the string quartet genre after having composed around 10 string quartets as a teenager. The work is dedicated to violinist Ignaz Schuppanzig and was premiered by his quartet on March 14, 1824. This quartet was famous for having worked with and premiered many of Beethoven's quartets. The Rosamunde Quartet was actually the only one of Schubert's string quartets and indeed of his chamber music works to be published during his lifetime and publicly performed. Most pieces in this genre were performed usually for small private audiences and gatherings. Around the time that Schubert composed this piece, his health was really bad. He had contracted syphilis around 1822, and by the spring of 1824, his outlook was pretty bleak, and he knew that his time was limited. It really feels like this awareness is woven throughout the music, where the beautiful lyricism combines with a sense of struggle and unmistakable feeling of fate. The nickname Rosamunde comes from Schubert's incidental music for the play Rosamunde, Princess of Cyprus by Helmina von Chesy, which premiered in December of 1823. In that theater work, Schubert wrote a theme for the Andantino of Entr'acte No. 3, among other things, and it is this melody that begins the second movement of the quartet. It's worth noting that the play itself was not a great success, shutting down after only 2 performances, but Schubert's music for it was widely appreciated and actually became one of his most popular works. Schubert composed many of his most famous works of chamber music in the last 5 years of his life. Rosamunde in particular highlights Schubert's gift for lyricism, a songwriter's touch in an instrumental medium, treating the movements almost like a set of lieder. Rosamunde is private, introspective, and vulnerable, focused on melody and inner emotion, creating meticulously crafted inner worlds rather than any sort of extroverted sense of expression or drama. Schubert's friend, Moritz von Schwind, said of the premiere, "On the whole, it is very tender, but in such a way that the melody remains in one's ear, like the songs, full of feeling and very pronounced." The movement begins hauntingly and immediately evokes the influence of song, sung by the first violin. The second violin plays a running eighth note texture, reminiscent of the piano texture in his song Gretchen am Spinnrad, representing a kind of emotional undercurrent of unrest beneath a lyrical surface. In the song, the running 16th notes paint a picture of a spinning wheel, of something turning round and round but never quite going anywhere. The opening of the quartet shares a similar character, evoking a sense of inevitability and creating a visceral sense of quiet emotional turbulence. The key of A minor sets the tone for the movement, and although there are moments of hope and levity, the minor key's darkness and expressive weight is always prevalent. As stated before, the second movement opens with the melody borrowed from the Rosamunde incidental music. The melody is simple, tender, song-like. The main melody employs a rather simple rhythm, long, short, short, long, long, again with flowing eighth note accompaniment in the second violin. The key of C major, the relative major of A minor, provides a more gentle, uplifted mood, but again without entirely escaping the shadow of minor. Later in the movement, there is a brief, agitated passage in fortissimo, which transforms the long, short, short motive and intensifies it to symphonic proportions. This is one of the rare moments of externalized anguish in this piece. Unlike a typical minuet movement, which usually serves as a lighter foil to weightier movements, this minuet is subtly tragic and ominous and draws us ever more inward. It borrows from another one of Schubert's songs, Die Götter Griechenlands. This movement is a dark and melancholic waltz, perhaps a memory of something past, perhaps a foreshadowing of something ominous to come. The dotted rhythms and upward swoop motives heard on the beat as well as off the main beat enhance this lilting, waltz-like feeling, adding to the sense of a spectral, moody dance. And like most things Schubert, the dark mystery of the minuet gives way to a quietly optimistic trio in A major, a sort of gentle, folky dance. However, this sense of hope and positivity brought on by the major key cannot be sustained, and in the movement's return to the tragedy of the minor key, exists only as a memory of unfulfilled yearning. The rustic feeling hinted at in the trio of the third movement takes over the fourth movement. This is a jolly yet gentle village dance, characterized by relatively simple harmonies, call and response phrases, drones in the bass, and ornamentation in the melodic line, which gives the movement a faintly improvisational quality. The offbeat swoops heard in the third movement are brought back in the opening phrase of the last, adding once again a sense of lilting dance and a common thread of character. This gentle and positive character, presented in A minor's parallel key of A major, clears up any sort of emotional and psychological ambiguity that has hovered over the other movements. However, the movement, and thus the entire piece, ends not in celebration or triumph, a victory of sorts over darkness a la Beethoven. Instead, the music gently tapers away as if the dance continues to fade away into the night. The final cadence, 2 chords, represents not so much closure and finality, but rather an abrupt end to the repetition of the dance itself. Schubert is often regarded as a late romantic soul trapped in a young man's body. He died at the tragically young age of 31, yet already in his 20s, he was grappling with themes of fate, of mortality, unfulfilled hopes, and the power of inward reflection. The Rosamunde Quartet embodies that, grief mingled with lyric beauty, a sense of time slipping away, of yearning for something just out of reach. Schubert is embracing grief as something that is inevitable, a failure as destiny. There is something so incredibly human in its vulnerability and layers of complicated emotion, and yet deeply compelling in its honesty and acceptance that there is still beauty to be had in loss, tragedy, and loneliness. The next time you listen to the Rosamunde Quartet, I invite you to listen for these delicate lyrical lines, the inner textures that create these evocative sound worlds, much like text painting in his Lieder, as well as the gentle contrast of major and minor. Not two opposing emotions, but perhaps two sides of the same coin. This is Schubert at his most intimate and personal. Chamber music not just as performance, but as confession.